to Black Nouveau. This is our edition for April. I'm Joanne Williams. 50 years ago this month, Dr. Martin Luther King was assassinated in Memphis. We'll discuss his legacy. We'll meet the Milwaukee siblings who are Sista strings. And April is Sexual Assault Awareness Month. We'll look at that problem right here in Milwaukee. You know, Oscar winner John Ridley spends much of his time in Hollywood, but he sees a bright future for filmmaking right here at home in Milwaukee. I spoke with him recently when he came back to unveil the new Nouveau studios in the Pabst Brewery complex. After receiving the highest award in the motion picture industry and all the glitz and glamour that goes with an Oscar, Milwaukee and John Ridley was brought back to reality by his sister Lisa right here in Milwaukee.
And Lisa called me, among all these folks, she said, "John, this is not going to last. This is an ephemeral moment, it's going to pass very quickly." So she really brought me back down to earth, because honestly, when you have a moment like that, there's really nothing else for you to do for yourself in your life. And Lisa's point was you have to start thinking about what you can do for other people.
So, along with a long list of people in Milwaukee who love film, filmmaking, and the arts, he is establishing a creative space in the brewery campus in one of the old Pabst buildings. He's named it the Nouveau Studio.
Yes is something that we just don't hear enough in our lives, personally and professionally, wherever we go, which is a big reason why this is called Nouveau Studios. Now, Nouveau is actually a root word, the Sino-Japanese root word for art, for skill, for talent.
So tell me about the Nouveau Studio. Did you ever think that you'd do something like this, and what do you want to accomplish with this?
I never thought I would have the opportunity. I never thought that, quite frankly, I would meet people who would say yes to something like this. As we talked about, the word no is, for all of us in life, it's a word I think we hear all too often, but certainly for people who work in a creative space. All filmmakers or all artists, if they're fine artists, if they're dancers, if they're musicians, if they work in sound recording or production, that all of those arts will be supported, they will be focused on at different times, but they are welcome in this environment that I think, 5, 10, 15, 25 years ago, that I would ever have the opportunity to be part of something like this? No, absolutely not. I'd be lying to you if I said that I did.
So what do you see 5, 10, 15 years ahead after this has been established and people have been using it? What do you want to see? You said you don't want this to be Hollywood on Lake Michigan.
Well, I certainly don't want that perception that we're going to show up and all of a sudden massive amounts of production are going to come in. That is a long-term discussion with citizens and with voters and with their representatives in Madison. I hope that they would choose to be competitive in that space. I would love to have the opportunity to come to Milwaukee and film. If realistically in 5 years, with everything else that we wanted to do, and we were still in existence, but we could point to 3 projects and say that we were instrumental in getting that filmmaker or that storyteller or that artist to the audience that they wanted to reach, I would consider in that first 5 years that would be a huge success.
6 film and arts groups will be moving into the building in the spring. Once you started working on this project in Milwaukee, and you, as you found, you were welcomed and people said, yes, let's do it.
Yeah.
And then you told the folks you work with back in Hollywood that you're doing this. What did they say?
They could not have been more excited. We had all kinds of offers from many individuals. How can we be part of it? How can we bring talkbacks, screenings, and things like that? Now, I still got to get all my famous friends to deliver, but the fact that they were encouraged, the fact that they thought it was a terrific idea, when we talked about that partnership among professionals, educators, and trying to go out into parts of the city where, frankly, folks probably did not feel invited to be part of something like this.
Encouraging young people to see the choices open to them is part of his mission.
You can pick up a gun or you can pick up a camera. There are choices that are out there, and it's certainly easy enough for me in my position to sit here and say it's easy to make the right choice. It's not that easy for everybody, but we can certainly encourage people. We can let them know that there is a choice, and more importantly, we can try to create those spaces where if they make that choice that we hope and believe is the right choice, there's actually somewhere to go with it. There's actually people who support them.
Of course, one of the big questions about the film industry in 2018, how about diversity? Is it there?
No, I don't think we're there yet, but I do think that there are people in Hollywood and across the country who are working towards being reflective in our storytelling. I mean, the reality is that the world that we live in, it's majority female, it's majority people of color. It's important that we reflect the world we live in, and if we talk about being reflective, could not be happier for Black Panther or Get Out or Wonder Woman, Lady Bird, projects like that, but on balance, are we really reflecting the world that we live in? I don't think so. So I think that there's a lot to work that needs to be done. I'm very happy to be part of organizations like the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences, which is actively working to be more reflective.
And I'm guessing you're proud of Milwaukee.
I'm very proud of the city, but I'm proud of the city because of all the things that afforded me. Over the years, it has afforded me, but also an acknowledgement that there are things that I can do to really help other individuals accomplish the things that they want to accomplish. That makes me proud.
So what's next for John Ridley? What should we be looking for?
Where's my publicist? I don't think I can talk about my other things. And more importantly, look, for Milwaukee right now, all the things that I want people to focus on are this space, what we're doing, the partners that we brought on board, and all these people who are working so hard to help us accomplish this right now. I gotta be honest, at this point in my life, it really is less about me and more about the things that I can do for other folks.
April is Sexual Assault Awareness Month. Joining us are Bianca Williams of the Cry for Help Foundation and Samantha Collier of Team Teal 365 to talk about their mission to uplift young women and girls in the city of Milwaukee. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So how bad is the problem of sexual abuse in Milwaukee?
It is a huge epidemic in the city of Milwaukee when it comes to sexual assault and sexual abuse, especially in our young children. It's happening each and every day, and they don't have spaces to talk about it. They don't have time to release that pain, to also heal from that pain, and to have a safe space to do it. They don't have those. They don't have that outlet. And it is really rising, especially working with the youth that I work with. And those youth grow up to be adults of undealt with trauma.
Right. Bianca, talk a little bit about your foundation. What kind of cases have you seen?
So Cry for Help is a nonprofit, been around about 3.5 years. We currently do housing assistance, food, clothing, hygiene, do small community events, and a street ministry. I'm starting to see a lot of cases where a lot of the young girls are starting to go or get involved in human sex trafficking at early age, as early as sometimes 13 and 15 years old, and they're not aware of all the side effects and what goes on.
Right. Samantha, what about your organization?
Team Teal 365 is an organization that empowers sexual assault survivors and their families. We're a very inclusive organization. We work with men, women, children, bystanders, spouses, the entire family, and which then leads to the entire community when it comes to bringing darkness to the light. A lot of times what happens in our house stays in our house mentality. We are just two people that are changing that narrative in many minds of our young people.
Bianca, you mentioned human sex trafficking. We just heard a report that said 340 people were trafficked over a 4-year period here. What about that number surprises you the most?
That's just reported, but there are many more cases that wasn't reported and still haven't been reported. It's a crime, and people need to understand that it's a crime and also realize that we need to get those victims some help and get them treated as well.
What surprised you the most about the numbers?
When it comes to the numbers, it reminds me of everything else in the city of Milwaukee. We're high on the list for crime, for poverty, for income, for resources. So when it comes to trafficking, I'm actually not surprised, James, because we know that that's just statistics. It's even more that's happening, because if there is no resources, if there is no income, if there is no education, that's a perfect hub for what we call human sex trafficking, why we're called the Harvard of human sex trafficking.
Now, what will you two do during the month of April to educate people about some of the issues that we have here?
Well, with Team Teal 365, we have at least 7 events, but one of our biggest events is Paint the City Teal Day. That is a day where we bring awareness to the color teal, which teal is the color for Sexual Assault Awareness Month, which is in April, the entire month of April. There's amazing events happening. But for us at Team Teal, April 13th is Paint the City Teal Day. And it's all about bringing awareness and also education to your neighborhood, to your job, to your company, to your school, by you wearing teal, wrapping teal around trees, and it brings attention to the 1 in 4 women and also the 1 in 6 men that has been or reported sexual assault.
What about you, Bianca?
So Cry for Help will be going into small community organizations, churches, and schools, educating the youth on human sex trafficking, sexual assaults, and who to report to, what to do, and know the signs of it for the parents, the guardians, and the educators.
What are some of the biggest misconceptions that you hear about sexual assault?
Oh, that's kind of crazy. I heard something a few days ago was, well, she wasn't assaulted. She gave it to him. She cannot legally give consent if she's only 13 years old to give someone sex. But people don't understand that.
One of the things that my young people say is that girls like to be raped and boys don't get raped. So that whole entire conversation I have to unravel and unpack and educate and explain that no person, no human being wants to be raped, and boys and men are assaulted. And I believe that lane of the 1 in 6 men needs more attention. So again, with Team Teal, we also did a podcast earlier this month that's going to come out this month in April. And we have men in our podcast that are survivors that's coming out and talking about what that is to be a Black survivor, heterosexual man in society, and what that looks like and what that feels like.
Right, and we have to address them too.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, thanks for joining us, and this has been very educational. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
No, thank you.
There is more information available on our website, MilwaukeePBS.org.
A cello and a violin make up this musical group called Sista Strings, whose sound is what they call soulful classic.
Sista Strings is just two sisters who grew up playing gospel music. We grew up learning classical music first because a lot of what we do is combining different genres and just being creative.
They have played strings since they were kids. Chauntee, 3 years of age, and Monique, 5.
So I played violin until I was about 9 and a half, 10, and I switched to cello. But when I was about 7 or 8 years old, I saw a recital where this guy was playing cello, another young student. It was a beautiful performance. I was like, I want to play that. And I begged for a couple of years, like, please, please get me a cello, please. And my dad was like, cello is for boys.
After much begging, they let her switch to play what she felt she was meant to play. They've even been street musicians, playing with their other siblings on Chicago's North Michigan Avenue, raising money for instruments.
We just got to post up on Michigan Avenue and play, and when we were younger, we did really well. Because, like, who isn't going to stop to look at some small little black girls?
4 little black
string
girls who are
instruments?
sisters.
That's not the most average sight you would see.
Right.
So we started doing that a while ago. We still do it sometimes, you know, because it's wherever, as musicians, literally, we're always on the grind.
It's actually really beautiful to do that as artists because you meet a lot of different people.
Playing there, they met producers and other musicians.
We've met some good friends that we have now through doing that, which is cool.
Surely.
It's real
Yeah,
cool.
Kanye West gave us $20 once.
He did. He did.
Sure did. Kevin Fishing. I didn't know who he was then.
They're passionate about social justice, and this naturally flows through their music.
We're a piece of the puzzle they try to put us under. But when that ain't work, better believe it was the muzzle. But see, I can't be sold. I'm just trying to evolve. They ain't gonna stop my flow. We just gonna let them blow. Goodbye, goodbye, goodbye.
We find it best to just come from our hearts and just try to go to the next person. We just pretty much just are unapologetically Black wherever we go. And how whatever situation we're in, we've just found that to be a beautiful way to connect with other people, and then allow that connection to maybe cross over to how you connect with other people who look like us.
Absolutely.
You see? But that's how we do.
Their musical inspiration comes from a variety of places, but one place in particular, their mom.
Because she did go through so much from her childhood, and seeing how strong of a Black woman she is now, and how she raised us, and how she was so committed to her family and to her husband and to her kids, and making sure we knew, first of all, what it was to be a strong Black woman in the United States, in Milwaukee, all of this, and giving us strength as far as just like how you live your life.
And that passion continues in their want to diversify the arts, so the "what are you doing here" moments can be avoided.
Growing up as a Black classical string player, there was probably about 2 or 3 other young students in my entire career of learning, and just in Milwaukee, you know. So I really didn't get to see or know that I was supposed to be doing this. It seemed odd. You know, I would come into a competition and get stares from everybody. Everybody would stop playing it. What are you doing in here?
Exactly.
Well, I'm a violinist here to compete, same as you.
Same even in college, though.
Yeah, in college as well. So really, that's where my passion and strive is, that we can do anything that we want to, as long as you're doing it honestly and with hard work. Just do it. That's my main purpose, and especially with young women and young women of color.
But somewhere I read of the freedom of assembly. Somewhere I read of the freedom of speech. Somewhere I read of the freedom of press. Somewhere I read that the greatness of America is the right to protest far right.
That's part of the "I've been to the mountaintop" speech that Dr. King gave, ironically, the night before his assassination. Most people remember the end of the speech where he says it doesn't matter what happens to me because he's been to the mountaintop. But few people know he was in Memphis supporting the Black sanitation workers' strike. Half a century later, there are many misconceptions about Dr. King's work. Joining us now are Claiborne Benson, founder of the Wisconsin Black Historical Society and Museum, and Dr. Rob Smith, director of Marquette University's Center for Urban Research, Teaching, and Outreach. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Why did he go to Memphis? Was he called by the sanitation workers?
Sanitation workers. He was called to go and to march. He was there the second day and to march and support them. The term was "we are" or "I am a man," as a and the sanitation workers were paid little or nothing. In the museum down there, they had the old truck, and it really looks like it's a 1950 truck. They had a tough time, and they weren't paid very well at all. And he went there to talk about economic development and the need for African Americans given fair and equal treatment in the employment area.
A lot of people probably do think that he was there for civil rights,
No.
which was a civil right, but economic equality is a civil right, right?
It certainly is, and it certainly was a part of the civil rights platform for decades. Of course, the March on Washington was the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom. And central to the Civil Rights Act of 1964, obviously, was Title VII, the Fair Employment Provision. And of course, there were fair employment laws prior to the 1960s, at both federal and state level. And so the question of economic equality was always central to the civil rights agenda.
Do you think that it made a difference that he was there?
I think it did, but he paid a severe price for being there. You know, I spoke to Dick Gregory when invited Dick Gregory to Milwaukee, and we spent a weekend together. And he talked about King being told by the FBI director that if he doesn't take his own life, he would take it for him. That's what the FBI director told him. And tears was running out of his eyes. King is terrified over the fact that someone's going to take his life. And then obviously he did take his life. King's daughter recently visited Milwaukee, and she, as you opened the discussion up, to talk about speeches that he gave. And she said she was happy that the I Have a Dream speech was not used in some of the presentations. And I personally was disappointed. I think that the I Have a Dream speeches echoed in every young person's minds and thoughts when he cites the equality. And it clearly reminds me of Thomas Jefferson in the Declaration of Independence, as Thomas is talking about creating a country where all people would be equal. Here it is, King. And probably, other than Lincoln, is the only person referring to the equality. People talk about freedom, talk about Emancipation Proclamation. We talk about all sorts of freedoms, the right to vote, but we don't talk about equality. And that's what King refers to in his speech. His whole speech refers to that. That's super. It's important.
Well, as an historian, do you think that the I Have a Dream speech delivered in Washington at the March on Washington overshadowed this second speech that was delivered in 1968 in people's memories?
Well, I think that's probably the case because of the way that we employ and use it. We use that speech both to remember Dr. King, but then also in some cases we've seen folks use it to misrepresent Dr. King as well. And I'll tell you a little story. My son and I, we were watching the I Have a Dream speech, and he said, "Dad, he keeps mentioning police brutality." Brilliant mind of a 9-year-old.
And that was in 1963.
1963.
Yes. So what's changed since he said that in '63 and since he said he'd been to the mountaintop in '68?
They lynched us in the South, and the police shoots us in the North. And it continues, even today. It continues. I still, when we're talking about the I Have a Dream speech, that equality is so central in terms of, he references it as he talks about his son and others being equal and judging people on their merits. And his speech in Memphis the day before he dies or is shot is profound. To do your own literature is so unique. How can I speak about what it's going to be like that I'm going to die in a minute, and I want you to remember this about me? That's profound.
Do you think that's profound, the legacy that he left, just his saying that I may not get there with you, but we will get there?
Oh, absolutely, because it clarifies in many respects that he understood how long the road would be and how hard the battles would be, and that there was still quite a bit of work to do and mountains to overcome in a lot of respects. Because this question of economic equality is still a central issue. If we're still talking about police brutality, We're still talking about economic equality. We're still talking about voting rights and political equality. It's all still here with us today.
Walk down the streets of Milwaukee, Wisconsin on Center Street where I'm at and look at the economic equality. Right. Look at the businesses, African-American. I'm not talking about big businesses. I'm talking about storefronts. I'm talking about laundromats and accounting firms. I'm talking about simple shoe shine parlors. Ain't none. That's by design. That's not an accident. Excuse me, I didn't mean that. That is so true.
Claiborne's gotten all excited, but we're gonna have to leave it right there. Thank you both for coming and talking about it. It was 50 years ago. Some memories of 1968 and thoughts about 2018. Before we close tonight, we note the passing of Lee Holloway, the first African-American to chair the Milwaukee County Board of Supervisors. He was first elected to the county's 5th district in 1992 and served on the board for 20 years. He left us in March at the age of 71. There's a web exclusive of remembrances on our website, Milwaukee PBS. It's also available on our Facebook page. Join us next month on May 3rd at 9 p.m. on Channel 10. We'll profile spoken word artist Cedric Hoard and discuss the Kerner Commission report 50 years later. And as always, we want to hear from you. Call us at 414-797-3760. Tell us what you like. Tell us what you didn't like and what you want to see. That number is 414-797-3760. And that's our program for this month. For Black Nouveau, I'm Joanne Williams. Thanks for watching.